This video is the first of my four-part educational series and dedicated to those who are under the misconception that institutional learning is the only method of acquiring knowledge. I've been making videos regarding my frustration of my targeting, which led me to bringing up this new project on modeling a better educational system. As we've seen from the over 1,400 videos that I've created, I've been a victim of lifelong bloodline targeting, which led me to understand that what happened to me in my childhood and the real reason for the bullying that took place in the schoolyard. For many of you who remember me, I was the girl who lived on J5 in Lancaster, California. You are now seeing the result of my endless battle with Nazism. This explains why I left school, since the program was to have me bullied and ostracized, and I had exited the school system in my late years of high school. I think it's important for me to say that I have always strongly believed in education, and my enthusiasm for school can be traced back to elementary and middle school years. Even with the bullying and the snide remarks, I would say that my school experiences throughout those years, that time period, was rather positive. I did experience a lot of bullying, but I still somehow stayed rather positive. By high school, it was just over the top, so I decided to leave. This is not about rebellion. I think that many people mistook my exiting and later following up completing my general education many years later was not in any way a form of rebellion. It was a solution to a haunting problem that I at the time could not figure out myself. I have decided that I would create a video to talk more about the education system, and since I was on the outskirts of, I would say, society, mainly because I was targeted for a very long time, and I knew that I could never really fit in. Okay, I remember making several attempts to try to enter back into a public institution, and I know that I have always met with some sort of encounter where it was very, my presence was not wanted. Okay. I was living pretty much an impossible situation. So what happened to me was I basically developed my own way of learning. This way of learning actually was going on way before I left the school system, meaning I've always took an interest in outside topics. But what this did make me understand is that it allowed me to do a lot of comparison and contrast to people who have been through what you call the traditional form of schooling. Okay, now some people, such as myself, start off in the school system, and then they end up, for whatever reason, having to exit it. And then some people live in certain areas where they don't have access to school. I mean, this is something that took place many years ago. Like, some people didn't have access to school. There's many reasons why people have become self-learners. So I want to go into a little bit about what it is to be somebody who is self-driven, and somebody who has taught themselves to be able to, if given the opportunity, enter into several different professions. Okay, mind you, we do have caps on these sort of things. Okay, like I personally believe that I am qualified to be a psychologist. I am qualified to be somebody who could enter into maybe help somebody through counseling. Okay, but even though I have all the knowledge, and which I think that most people would agree that I have those skills, we do have things that we have to consider, such as licensing and certain state approved or government approved ways of obtaining those things. And generally that is set up through like college programs to receive those sort of certificates. Okay, so but what I will say is that what a lot of the skills that I have acquired are things that are transferable and still good for the workplace, and this is what a lot of people have done with their life. I'm going to go into the next slide. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the different ways that people become autodidacts, right? In my case, I had mentioned that I was going to be making this video series on education, or the revision of education. In the video, Hell Yeah, I'm Extra. Now, to see that video, you can click in the link in the description box. But I was acknowledging the different talents and skills that I have acquired, and I was explaining, how they fit into the category of somebody who is self-learned. Now, I'm going to kind of break out one of the first things that I covered in this video, Hell Yeah, I'm Extra. The first thing I acknowledged, is exactly what I am. I am an occultist. Now, in this case, sometimes, and this might relate to other people who may be watching this video, okay, sometimes your past life inklings lead to research. In this case, when I was a young girl, I've always experienced things that were relating to the occult, okay? I know that I had noticed when I was a young girl that I had the ability, I had telekinesis, right? Like, I had noticed that, sometimes when the house would settle, like make that cracking noise, there were often times when I would actually jump or flinch, and then the cracking noise would occur. So I knew that I was somehow in sync with the energies around me. Now, the thing is that I was aware that I had these powers, right? But I didn't know the name of it. Okay, so in this case, my past life inkling led to research. I started looking at books. When I first had my astral projection experience, I remember telling my sister Lisa, okay, and my sister Lisa told me that she read a book on Hinduism and that explained what astral projection was. At that point, I started reading more about what astral projection is, who was able to achieve it, so on and so forth. So this leads to research. Sometimes the things that we already have inside of us lead us to getting explanations and getting answers, okay, which gives us understanding of the definitions of what we're experiencing. In my case, like when it came to the telekinesis, I didn't know what that was. All I knew is that sometimes I would, act before something actually occurred, okay, which showed that I was in some sort of sync, and I was in rhythm and connection with what the energies were going on around me. Didn't understand it, and I would have explained it in that long manner instead of being able to describe it by the actual word that fits it. This is because I did the research, and now I understand the terminology of those things. Now, let's go back to me being an occultist. Now, I'm an occultist by D&E, by nature. Okay, and there's a lot of people, and we can talk about this in another video, but there's a lot of people who were born as occultists by nature, okay? These people were most likely targeted, by the way. But anyway, I'm an occultist because of my Egyptian background, okay? But as Maria Gordon, before I knew that, right, I've always had an interest in those things. Now I understand my DNA makeup, and it makes sense, okay? But as an occultist, there's many things that fall under that category. As an occultist, now not all occultists are pharaohnologists. That was something that I had said that I was, okay? I'm good at it. I'm good at it, okay? I can read people. And my past life written as information based on C.B. Braganza's information that he was providing people. He considered himself to be an astrologer, okay? I've carried that into this life. I am a seer, meaning I have the ability to see past events, present events, and I can also predict future events, okay, if I have some sort of emotional tie. Okay, obviously I care about myself, or if I care about someone else, I'm going to protect that, and feel and sense out the energy around them, okay? So I'm a seer, okay? I have psychic powers, and I also have ESP. I'm not going to sit here and list ESP. I'm going to go ahead and use that under the same category of it, as a seer. And of course, underneath that, in the past, describing myself as C.B. Braganza, I called myself a teacher. Now, I'm a teacher back then, and I enjoy teaching now. I think, when I found out I was blacklisted and could not do any more management jobs, at first it kind of upset me because I'm a natural teacher. I love telling people stuff. Now that I understand the employment system, okay, I'm fine with it. But, totally fine with it. But, I'm a teacher, okay? And by nature, I've always loved explaining something. One of the first things that I used to do when I learned something when I was a kid, when I first learned how to read, I could not wait to read for my family. I probably bored them, but one of the things that helps to retain knowledge is to get that information and start talking about it enthusiastically. That's one thing that's going to help, get that repetitive words and things that relate to that subject matter in your brain. So yes, when it comes to being an autodidact, sometimes it's because of the past life inklings that lead to further research, and it's because of that that makes it so that you acquire a lot of knowledge. Now, when it comes to occupational skills that I've acquired, and what I mean by occupational skills is like, for example, things that I do or know about that could be um, used as a title. Okay, like for example, I had mentioned in the Hell Yeah, I'm Extra video that I have the necessary skills to be a social scientist, seeing as how I understand psychology. Now, I could be a social scientist and I can also be a psychologist. Why? Because I know people. I know people very well, okay? But like I said, I would not legally be able to receive any sort of payment for that because by law, I have to be a licensed professional, okay? I just so happen to understand things like psychology and social science because number one, I've done many experiments on my own. Like I mentioned, I used to observe people. I still do that, okay? I'm somebody who learns in many different ways, not just textbook learning. I have always, been somebody who observed my surroundings. I'm good at understanding human nature. And like I said, I knew that I was good at understanding human nature as a child. And what opened the door to my interest in psychology was we had in second grade, I forgot the name of this book, okay? But they were describing, our emotions about, as warm fuzzies or cold pricklies, right? And I remember listening to what the teacher was saying with this book, and I remember thinking about my home life and thinking about how sometimes my mom didn't really act the way an adult should act. And I remember when my mom was like flying off the handle with me, I started talking to her about the things that I was learning in school. And her attitude was just like, of course, kind of shut me up. Her response was, I don't really care what you think or whatever. This is my house, blah, 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 blah. So I understood, okay, I'm in a dysfunctional family. So I will tell you, this led to my interest in psychology. Now, I remember taking psychology in high school, right, as an elective. And after that, after I left, the regular system, I remember collecting as much information about psychology. If I would go to a secondhand store, there were times where I would purchase textbooks on psychology so that I could understand, along with my natural ability of understanding human nature, the terminology. Okay, the proper terminology that I would be able to use to relate to the things that I was experiencing and observing. That's it. Okay, so this kind of goes under the category of, me being an occultist. Yes, it does, because this is a natural skill that I've always had. Okay, but that understanding led me to, and understanding how human nature works and that sort of stuff. I'm really good at it, right? But I still thought in order for me to be able to explain things to other people, okay, I would need to be like able to understand and be able to identify, what is a narcissist? You know, what is, certain mental disorders that people have that are very common that are infiltrating society. I'm able to describe those things, right? Why? Because number one, my natural skill, which led me to further my interest in psychology. I am not able to be a psychologist because of that. Now, I can sit here and listen to, somebody who might come over to my house and they can tell me all their problems, and I would be the best sounding board for them. Okay? Because I feel so I not only am listening to them, I fully understand them, and yes, I can give them really good advice. Okay? But legally, I cannot get paid for that. All right? Now, another thing that I have, I can't really say that being a philosopher is occupational unless, of course, I'm creating works, hardbound works and selling them, or I'm doing some sort of, what do you call it, social media type stuff where I'm getting paid or monetizing my work, okay, right? As a philosopher. But the way that I see things, okay, because of my observations, understanding how the world works, I'm obviously going to conduct myself, in a professional manner. I'm always going to know how to be the chameleon. Even though people picked on me, they were set to pick on me. But no one can ever say that I am to blame for anything either. Why? Because I understand human nature. And because of that, I've incorporated it into my lifestyle. Therefore, it becomes part of my philosophy. Okay? The other profession that I think that I would do well would be law. Okay? Now, I did mention this, I think I did mention it on the other video, but I just didn't list it.
Okay, like everybody knew that when I was dealing with my gang stalking, I was referring to law, understanding what my rights were. Okay, referring to things that related to civil law, things that related to employment law. Okay, now according to the rules here in the United States, okay, the only way that I can actually be a lawyer is if I went through a certain amount of get a certain amount of college credits, then I could take the bar exam. Okay, now I personally would think it'd be a great idea if someone like myself, just wanted to see what was on the bar. What's on the bar? What's on the bar test? And exactly what's on it? Like, are they asking you to see where certain laws are applied, or in giving you certain situations, and then trying to identify which law that or where that category actually falls under? I'd like to know what's on the bar myself, okay, and see if I could take it if I decided to. I've got other things to do, but if, for example, I'm talking about restructuring the education system. This is all hypothetical, okay? What if people followed my plan, okay? And people were incorporating things like law. Things like law, okay, the reason why it comes easy to me is, number one, I will tell you how I incorporated law throughout my life, okay? Everything that we did in our household, okay, was operated on the law. Okay, when we got our bicycles, my dad told us the reason why we had to follow traffic in a certain way is because it was a law. Okay, everything related to the law. Okay, so that we knew how to be good citizens. We knew that when we went to the store, my dad would prefer us to keep our hands straight. Okay, and not bring in extra things that we wanted to, like our toys and stuff, into the store. Why? Because we knew stealing was wrong, and we knew we didn't want anyone to accuse us of stealing. Stealing was a no-no. Okay, there were certain things that everything that we did in our home, it was always a law. And anytime we tried to start something, I needed to know the legalities of it. Just like when I first started my job. Okay, first job I ever had was at a pizza place. Okay, and you know what? Geeky as it is, I wanted to know what the rules were. What are the rules? Okay, I knew that, like, when you're a teenager, you have to wear a uniform. Fast food places, you're stuck with that uniform. Okay, period. Okay, so that sucked, but you know what? At least I was glad that it was royal blue, because at the time it complimented my complexion. Okay, but I remember doing that. Now, when I decided to work at Edwards Air Force Base, what I did was, a lot of times um, they would want us to throw away old material because it's no longer needed. I would read that material because I figure, okay, I don't have this, and this like all these other people, and I was late in the game entering into employment, so I want to know as much about law as I possibly can. So there were always rules, employment manuals, and stuff like that, and I would read it. Okay, so when it comes down to law and things that relate to me, things like relating to employment, I'm well versed in it. When it comes to things that relate to behavioral law, things, I think that would fall under the category of civil law. I could do that. Now, can I take the bar? I don't know. Okay, I believe the actual protocol would be you have to have a certain amount of college credits. Okay, but it would save time if people were like me, who've incorporated things in their life. Real educated person. Okay, I'm talking about the way it's supposed to be. The way the school system was designed, hopefully, that people would walk away being able to talk about these sort of things and understand what the laws were. But unfortunately, it does not get reinforced. And see, this is a part of my redesigning of the education system. All right, so the next thing is I'm also a content and copywriter. Yes, I'm an amateur, is what I am. Okay, can I do better graphics? Can I do more picturesque type things for the viewer? Yes, I can. I am learning as I go along. Okay, I don't have a whole lot of incentive to continue going. Okay, so the little bit I do know, I apply. Okay, but my goal is to learn more. Okay, and of course, I put teacher down here. I listed under occupation. I know I listed it twice, but I am a teacher. You know what I mean? And I take the things that I know and I translate it or transfer it into copy and content work. That's what I do. Okay, enthusiastically. But these are ways that you can become an autodidact. Okay, it could be a past life inkling. It could also be you just slowly incorporating things inside your life, slowly but surely, in increments. And by the time you're a certain age, you already know stuff. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what. This is why I say it is completely possible for kids to be able to leave college, leave high school, take 2 years of like surgical information or whatever when it comes to the medical system, and they could be having going on with their lives without the college system. It's totally possible. Okay, especially if you teach people the parts of the body, as you go on. First, you do each part of the outside body, and to the inside of the body, understanding which tissues are connected, what organs are interconnected, how the human body works. There is no reason why a person could not be a doctor. There is no reason why they couldn't be. Okay, and of course there's other things they have to learn, like learning medicine and stuff like that, and these surgical tools and stuff like that are current and up to date. Sure, of course. You know what I mean? I'm doing this project because I feel as though it's necessary. I'm going to go on to the next slide, okay? Now, as you know, I have many titles, many different skills, many different talents and abilities that I can actually do. But when you refer to Maria Gordon, you can describe her or refer to her as an autodidact. And I am using the wordnik definition for this word. Okay, number one is a self-taught person. Number two, one who is self-taught, also known as an automath. And number three, a self-taught person, also referred to as an automath. I think this is going to be the most fun part of the video for me to make this part, because I've always thought it was exciting to learn about people that you hear about in school and find out that they themselves either didn't go to school at all, or may have had the same sort of school pattern like I did. Like, I started off in the system and then ended outside of the system. And some people started outside of the system and then later went into the system. There's all kinds of ways that people become autodidacts, okay? But there are some noteworthy autodidacts that I get excited about talking about, because they've contributed so much to society and so very little is known about them. Okay, to get started, I thought we would begin with artists and authors. Charles Dickens, the English novelist, journalist, short story writer, and social critic. Okay, he's known for writing some of literature's best-known fictional characters, and he is regarded by many people as the greatest novelist of the Victorian era. Now, some of you guys may remember the books that you may have been required to read in the education system. I myself remember him. I remember, and this was going to spark some of you guys' memory. You may remember the character Ebenezer Scrooge and Tiny Tim from his novel A Christmas Carol, right? Or you may remember, I remember this one especially, because I remember this one in high school, the character Pip from Great Expectations. His books that he wrote, this uneducated man contributed his published work, and it was widely circulated in the school system. It may still be today. Samuel Langhorne Clemens may not ring a bell, but the name Mark Twain definitely will. Now, that was his real name, but his pen name was Mark Twain. He was an American writer, humorist, and an essayist. And I'm sure everybody, at least if you're my age and older, you probably remember the adventures of Tom Sawyer and also the adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The one that I remember a lot as a kid, this was not something that, I remember reading Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. They were in school libraries, and we also had what they call reading assignments that we had to do, and oftentimes we would cover Mark Twain. I remember Pudd'nhead Wilson. That may not be one of his most well-known, but I do remember enjoying that story, Pudd'nhead Wilson, the most. But yes, this man was somebody who was a autodidact, and he contributed to the education system. Now, Eddie Van Halen is not an author, but he was an artist, okay? And, okay, I'm sorry, I could not resist, okay? And mind you, this is my first video
in my 4-part series. So I swear to you that my next 3 videos are going to be scripted. I am not going to get off the script. But when I think of people like Eddie Van Halen, I cannot help but get on the spiritual thing, or a little bit at least, okay? Now, Eddie Van Halen is somebody that I often thought maybe, and I haven't done any readings or any deep thoughts about it, but I often thought that maybe he may have been like Mozart or someone like that in a past life, if he was a clone. I don't know. But anyway, he was an autodidact who could play almost any instrument, but he couldn't read music. Now, isn't that strange, right? He was classically trained in piano, and he created some of the most distinctive guitar riffs in rock history. Here's another artist, one that I have always loved, Jimi Hendrix. He taught himself the electric guitar, and he was a damn good at it. He also was a singer and a songwriter.
Okay, so let's talk about engineers and inventors.
Okay, most of you know who Thomas Edison is. But did you know that he was an autodidact? You probably didn't know that. He was the inventor of the phonograph, the motion picture camera, as well as the earlier versions of the electric light bulb. He established the first industrial research laboratory. He did not receive much formal education. He apparently, from what I've read, that he only attended school for a few months, not years, months, okay? His mother taught him how to read, she taught him how to write, and she also taught him basic mathematics. People who described him as a very curious child who liked learning and reading on his own. And he was very fascinated with technology. Now, and obviously he's somebody who contributed a lot to the modern industrial world.
And of course, I'm going to mention the nemesis of Edison, which would be Nikola Tesla. He was a Serbian-American engineer and inventor. He's best known for his contribution to the design of the modern alternating current electricity supply system. He had very little education, decided to leave school and work, and basically learned his training on the job, took an interest in what he was doing, and excelled at it, and became what he's known for.
Now, these 2 brothers, I'm referring to Orville and Wilbur Wright, also known as the Wright brothers, were some of the first inventors that you learn about in the school system. Now, neither brother graduated from high school or attended college. Now, Wilbur, he did take the first step in his interest in aeronautics by doing independent study. I'm assuming that he probably went to like the library, studied books there, and then possibly, I don't know if they had used bookstores back then, but he did his own independent studies on how to create the airplane. Now, both of the Wright brothers, they are known for inventing, building, and flying the world's first successful airplane. I'm going to go ahead and throw Henry Ford into this category. He was known as an American industrialist and a business tycoon, and he's the founder of the Ford Motor Company. He did not attend any college. He's also credited as a pioneer of making automobiles affordable for middle-class Americans through a social and economic system named after him. Isn't he important? That would be called Fordism. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, all of these people are from like the old school, okay? So I decided to throw in Elon Musk, okay? Why? Because he's more modern day. Most people are going to recognize his name. But, you know, apparently Elon Musk, the billionaire, is he's self-taught in rocket science. Now, when it comes to autodidacts, I'm going to put him in this category, but it seems as though he also holds a bachelor's degree from a regular institutional school, right? But as far as what I understand, he has taught himself rocket science outside of the institution. Okay, he is the founder of SpaceX and the co-founder of the automobile company Tesla. Now, I'm going to throw Frank Lloyd Wright into this category under engineers and inventors, even though he's considered an architect. And the reason why is because he was very innovative in his designs. Okay, he was quite remarkable. He kind of drifted in and out of the school system. His mother taught him how to read and write. And when he was very young, his mother got him a educational toy that was being highly promoted for kindergarten children. And these blocks, or should I say, they weren't really blocks, they were more like shapes, different geometrical shapes. And so when she gave it to him, he became very addicted to them, and his interest in putting them together, transformed him to want to understand, measuring and all the things that involve creating objects, building structures, whatever. So this is how he developed his interest in architecture. Now there is really no record of him completing high school, and he did have an opportunity to study at college, but did not stay there for very long. Apparently he was taken in by a man named Alan D. Conover, who was a professor at his at the university. Okay, but apparently, Frank Lloyd Wright just wasn't one of those people that was built for institutionalized learning. He decided to fly with his own wings. Frank Lloyd Wright was considered an American architect, interior designer, and a writer, and an educator, meaning the methods that he used to design his buildings have been taught in college classes for people who are interested in learning architecture, designs, possibly even geometry classes that have something to do with learning how to build and work with blocks and angles. But yes, this is a man who hardly had much education, but he is considered an educator. Now I'm going to show a few autodidacts that are associated with religion. Okay, this is going to be kind of a wide range. Not too many. I don't want to show too many people because I want to keep this video at a certain length. Okay, but a lot of people are under the misconception that a religious person has to go through institutionalized learning to be enlightened. Okay, and I think there's a lot of confusion as to what the higher power views as the kind of knowledge that is recognized and what is respected in the other realm. Okay, and yes, I'm going to tell you that knowledge is something that I believe is important. Okay, I would think that when it comes to somebody who leads a very spiritual life, that in order to develop a sense of spirituality, you have to have knowledge. Okay, but that knowledge does not necessarily have to be institutionalized. Like, I think the reason why I was attacked, part of the reason I was attacked is because everyone knows that I was bullied out of school, and because I couldn't withstand the bullying, I got bullied even more, right? Which is kind of funny. But anyway, when it comes to religion, I know that last fall I had created a project, the Swan Song Manifesto, and I think that there was a lot of rumors going around that I was starting a new religion. Okay, no, I'm not starting a religion. I am basically somebody who is an occultist, which, I would say elements of the occult trickles down to just about every religion, okay, because the occult is pretty much where everything started. But okay, there are people who have become successful in their form of religion. Okay, maybe it's that as autodidacts. Okay, maybe they studied the Bible on their own, or whatever religious text that their religion is associated with. They may not have done this with the instructor, like through like a religious school system or a religious college. They may have taken on independent study and felt inspired to encourage other people on that spiritual path. Okay, so in this case, because of those people who took an independent Bible study, they still practice their religion, and they are still successful as being like preachers or whatever. Okay, that's one form of being an autodidact, understanding the doctrine that they're teaching. Okay, also another form of it might be some of these people I'm going to mention didn't have any formal writing skills, okay,
but they became writers themselves. Like I'm going to go into people like L. Ron Hubbard and people like Ellen White. Okay, these people were considered basically, when it comes to the institution, not really educated, but these were self-taught people. So they might have developed their, like, I know I write this Swan Song Manifesto, which is not a religion. It's basically somebody who's just, I just enjoy nature, okay? I'm telling people get back to nature, get into their culture. That's not necessarily pointing out, what deity to worship or anything. You can do your own thing, okay? But what I'm saying is that when it comes to religion, there are a lot of self-taught people, whether they're teaching themselves or studying the doctrines of their religion, or they're they're self-taught writers. And then there's also people who are self-taught preachers in general. And there is a certain way of keeping people entertained when when you preach, okay? Like, I think a lot of people are familiar with, like, I don't want to imitate it with that because I know I'm going to sound stupid doing it. But you know what I'm talking about. There are certain people who have a certain sound, and they've experimented with that sound to try to get people's attention, okay? And as annoying as it might sound to some people, or even comical, okay, it's still a form of communication technique that they experimented with in order to produce and bring it to their audience, okay? So these people would still be considered autodidacts because even if they develop their own personal style, it's what they've learned and this is what they're working with, okay? So let's go into certain religious figures who are considered autodidacts.
I'm going to mention Joel Osteen since he is of the current time period. He is an American pastor of Lakewood Church. He's a televangelist and an author. Apparently, he never finished college. Okay, Malcolm X was an African-American revolutionary. He was a minister of the Sunni Islamic faith. He was a human rights activist and a prominent figure during the civil rights movement until his assassination in 1965. He did have a lot of problems growing up. He grew up in poverty. He was going in and out of the foster care system. He did not have a chance to have a proper education because he was dealing with things like the foster care system. He obviously didn't have a good upbringing. And in order to support himself, he oftentimes resorted to petty crimes. While in prison, he developed skills that allowed him to become the public speaker and the human rights activist that people well know him as. He taught himself subjects relating to genetics, sociology, and philosophy. And he was also, I would consider him an autodidact because he took it upon himself to increase his vocabulary while he was in prison by copying the dictionary word for word. And Ellen White, she was an American author and co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Okay, L. Ron Hubbard was originally started off as a writer, and he became very well known for his science fiction and his fantasy stories. He did develop a controversial book, or I would say a set of different books called Dianetics. He is the founder of the Church of Scientology. Now I'm going to talk about those who have contributed to social media, technology, and software. And I just want to touch on this subject a little bit because, I'm somebody who uses social media, and I definitely have used and see the benefit of technology and software. Okay, now I'm somebody who is very old school, but I do understand that these things are very important, and I certainly see their importance because they're used in the workplace and they're also used for our personal uses. Okay, when it comes to these topics, so I'm going to tell you that even though I am not like somebody who is very much into technology, I'm going to tell you that I'm extremely impressed with people who have that knack. Okay, and what I do know and what I've observed with people who have that knack, I honestly do think that it's almost mystical because the kids that I remember who were kind of like computer nerds when I was growing up, they almost seemed like they were in sync with it. Okay,
And I do understand that, when back in the 90s, I'm thinking about my first home computer that I actually purchased for myself, okay? I remember it was big and bulky and whatever, but I remember, when computers were, slowly becoming more evolved and becoming placed into the homes of people. Back in the 80s, I remember there was a kid that I used to go to their house after school because his brother had a computer, right? That wasn't the only reason, but his brother had a computer. And back then it was quite, I don't know, cumbersome, I guess. They did have the modem. They would detach the phone and put it on like this thing. It was an elaborate setup. Okay, still, I would say people who were computer geeks then are somewhat computer geeks now, and have evolved into whatever. One of the things that was talked about back in the 90s when, a lot of people were going to school pursuing like degrees in this particular field was the issue of the rapid technology, because the computers back in the 90s are completely different than how they are now. And I'm not just talking about like, the way the computers are made, I'm talking about the software and everything, okay? So it's like, for people who were to pursue a degree in that, it's like once they left school, the technology would have already changed, okay? So I really do look at people who have the ability to work and invent, add, and expand upon what's already created, this form of technology, as a gift. Okay, like I really do. It's not to say that schooling is not important on this subject. It's just that I've noticed the people that I remember, were just kind of in sync with it and just rolled with it. Okay, and they just knew technology and flowed with it. And I think when people get the formal education to relating to these particular subjects, it's like I said, it's like, okay, people have already moved on with something else. Okay, it's always moving, always progressing.
Just about everybody has a Facebook account, and of course I have one too. This is one of the reasons, or one of the ways that we made it easy to target me. But still, everybody can relate and identify what Facebook is and the benefits that people get from it. It is a great way of connecting with people. Mark Zuckerberg, he's an American businessman. He's a co-founder of Facebook and its parent company, Meta Platforms. He dropped out of Harvard to start Facebook. Well, it looks like we have another Harvard dropout. Bill Gates, he is an American businessman, a philanthropist, and co-founder of Microsoft. One of the world's largest technology infrastructure companies is Dell Technologies. And Michael Dell started Dell Computers in his dorm in college. He enjoyed it so much that he decided to drop out and pursue this as a career. So he is a college dropout. He's an American billionaire, founder, chairman, and CEO of Dell Technologies. And I didn't want to sit here and drag on all these different slides of all these different autodidacts, right? But I've just summarized a small list here for the people that I didn't mention individually. I will tell you the list is actually longer than this, okay? But, I only have so much time, okay? But there's more autodidacts in the world and that are famous that you are aware of, but you just didn't know that they're autodidacts, right? So I'm going to let you go through this list, and then we're going to go through some questions and answers. Okay, the first question would be, is a homeschool student considered an autodidact? Now, I'm going to say if they're doing so without an instructor, yes. Now, some of these homeschool curriculums that I'm talking about, curriculums for kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and then also people who decide to attend college online, okay? If they are doing so without an instructor, I would consider them to be an autodidact. Now, I would think that most, like for example, when I went to school for accounting, okay, as I said, there wasn't really that heavily of like focus on online work. So like when I took a test, I would just go ahead and call on like a telephone number and type in the answers. Also, when there was a 1-800 number if you needed instructional help, right? But I never really needed that.
Okay, so, but they do have those. They are set up if you need to have access to them, but they are not necessarily a part of the everyday learning process. I would say yes, and at some point, when it comes to homeschooling kids, like, I know that the parent usually teaches the kid, the fundamentals of, like, reading, writing, those sort of things, arithmetic, even with their online curriculum if they are homeschooled, okay? Or it might be the parent, or maybe a babysitter, or maybe whatever, okay? And that's completely fine. But at some point, when the kid starts to read on their own, they usually do develop a routine to where they know it's time to start doing their schoolwork. They're studying on their own. They're completing their tests and their exams on their own, based on their own reading. They're just kind of doing it on their own. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Oh yeah, now I don't really know what the end thing is when it comes to online, what do you call it, curriculums, okay? But like I said, I'm doing more videos on revising the education system. So I'm learning more about the curriculums, and I'm also going to be looking at homeschooling curriculums as well. I know that a lot of them are set up to where the teachers are more interactive. That's all I know right now, and I will be giving more information on that in my future videos.
What are some learning methods of autodidacts? Well, in my case, and I can't speak for everybody, but in my case, I would get my hands on reading material from all sources. I read textbooks, sometimes purchased at a school, and sometimes I would get them used, like, at a thrift store, okay? Now, when it comes to textbooks, you gotta be careful because some things are considered out of date. Like, for example, if I was to pick up for example, an accounting textbook from a used bookstore that was written in the 1970s or the 1980s, okay? Obviously, credits and debits and things like that have not changed, okay? The core of it. But how accounting is done, it has changed, okay? So it's not necessarily that I'm learning outdated information, but at the same time, it's kind of silly because I can't really put it to practical use, okay? So when it comes to textbooks, you want to make sure that you're reading up-to-date information. I was the person who always read the employment manual. People were always shocked, like, why is Brady reading the employment manual? Because, is someone who knows, being targeted, being bullied a lot, I must have instinctively knew, hey, I need to know what I'm able to do within these guidelines because I want to make sure I'm blameless. But basically, I would read anything that related to my life. Like, if I'm working for a company, I want to read the employment manual. If I get something new, like a new house, okay, if I don't have a house, but if I did, I'd want to know, can I paint my house a certain color? Because there might be some sort of ordinance that, says that I couldn't. I want to know how to work in the guidelines. I have read law books. I do remember taking a course on legal contracts and torts, but I've also been interested in law for a very long time. Like I said, law was incorporated in my life, throughout my life. And yes, I have collected law books, like, various things or stories that were based on, legal accounts or things that actually took place. And I also read books that were published by different authors, okay? When it comes to autodidacts, they also, a lot of them rely on internet searches. Now, when I do information, look up things online, I always want to make sure that I get other people's opinions as well, okay? The reason why is because anybody can write anything, okay? And it's not that I'm discrediting the writers or the information on the internet. It's just that, you know what it is. I mean, there's all kinds of infiltration and information that might be questionable, right? And it's always good to get different opinions and different sides of things, okay? So I don't rely on my internet searches, but I do reference their information if they do provide it.
like for example, if they said that, they're referencing maybe something that occurred a few years ago, it just, intrigued me. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to look up this issue. Not because I'm trying to purposely find flaws in their story. Okay. It's just that, for example, if it's a life or death situation, I want to make sure I'm getting accurate information. That's all. Okay. So, so used bookstores and libraries are also learning methods that we incorporate. At least I can speak for myself. Now, a few years ago, I remember going to a parent-teacher aid store when my son was in junior high. Okay, I decided that my son was going to be homeschooled in junior high school. So I remember going to the parent-teacher aid store and getting things like, workbooks and I remember actually purchasing a workbook for myself. And you're thinking, okay, why would I purchase a workbook for myself? Okay. I wanted to know, I was sad because I didn't get to go to regular school, and learn things that, like, for example, I always wanted to learn geometry. I always wanted to learn geometry. And I knew that what I remember from geometry was not much. So I literally wanted to know geometry, not because I felt like people needed to know that, but I wanted to for my own personal contentment, my own satisfaction. So I purchased a workbook with questions and answers for like, I'm going to tell you, it was funny. It was like a child book, okay? But I understood, I don't remember geometry. So sometimes if you want to learn something, it's okay to start from the very beginning. It's okay you don't have to be embarrassed or ashamed about it if you want to learn like a form of mathematics and you want to start from the very beginning. It's not like you haven't heard it before, but sometimes, you just need to remember it's a formula, okay? Mathematics can be learned, and I would say the biggest problem with higher level mathematics that I found for myself is I always forgot the formula. I would know it enough to take like algebra, things like that. I would know it enough to take the test. I'm seriously, I would know it enough to take the test, but it's memorizing the formula, okay, is what gets people thrown off. So if you have to start from the beginning, don't be embarrassed to go get yourself a workbook with questions and answers for school kids. Don't be embarrassed to be that. And if anything, the important thing is that you are learning, okay? Also, there are things that are being taught in homeschool, okay, for people, and autodidacts probably take advantage of this as well. It's called unschooling. Now, there's a lot of myths that are surrounding unschooling. Some people just have like this negative view of what unschooling is because they feel that, or they believe that unschooling involves no reading. Okay, and I will say there are some like what you call like really open-minded parents, that live out like in rural areas and they let their kids, just kind of run around and do whatever they want and they kind of explore, and this is what they do. And some reading for them is not necessary. They don't think it's important. Okay, but for me, I always knew that reading to me was like the most important thing. If you could read, you can pretty much figure out anything. This is how, most autodidacts learn. Okay, like I said, like Colonel Saunders learned and taught himself trigonometry just by him having good reading comprehension skills. So when it comes to unschooling, there are certain methods that can be used that I myself think are great, right? Okay, the point of alternative forms of learning like unschooling is that I would use, okay? Like I can see the point of, trying to instill intrigue in kids, okay, for them to develop an interest in that subject. And sometimes the method of unschooling, it would be ideal. Why? Because it's going to get them interested for further learning. Okay, so like for example, you want to talk about a particular historical icon or something. You might go to a trip to the museum first. Okay, that's considered a form of unschooling, okay, because you're not doing the old-fashioned sitting at a desk reading, okay, you're actually going to see things, going out on field trips, digging in dirt. If you're learning about soil or minerals in the earth or something, you're actually digging it up yourself. That's a form of unschooling. School field trips, experiments, going to the museum, stuff like that. So now, once you take the kid to the museum, they get to see relics of what this person wore. They get to, hear quotes that they said, their life experiences, their hardships, their joys. Now they're getting interested, right? And now, once they're interested, they want to find out all the details, right? So guess what? They can start reading more. about that person, that subject, that situation. Unschooling is not a bad method, okay, but I do think it's misunderstood, okay? It's misunderstood because people think, oh, that means that there's no reading involved, your kid's just running amok. I will say some people do it that way, and that's fine for them, I guess, okay? But I have always dangled between me in the system and unfortunately me being out of the system, meaning, you know, obviously people kind of were hard on me because I didn't fit the mold of the ideal person, because I'm somewhere in the middle, okay? Because I've been booted out of the system, but I always had to work in the system, okay? So I always knew because I had to work in the system, I better read. Okay, reading is the utmost importance. But combining unschooling methods first and then encouraging reading later, I think that's key.
Do autodidacts hate the school system? I know I can't speak for every autodidact, okay? But my issue with the school system is rather lengthy. But I will say that the purpose of the school system should be to educate, of course, and make people into productive citizens, okay? Which means that they should encourage good conduct and, of course, to develop skills to contribute through to society in the future. And that, of course, would be by building a career, a stable career, okay, for the students. Now, I have fond memories of many of my teachers going up in school, and some of them were very creative and able to relate to children in a very special way. Okay, however, they still had to follow the set curriculum that was set by the school district. Okay, and I did have fun times in those classes, you know. But I would say, you know, looking back in me being in the school system, and I will say that the information that I got from the school system, of course, I retained as much as I possibly could and put it into action. You know, things like, you know, sewing. I took sewing in school. I took typing in school. You know, those sort of things that I incorporated into my life. Okay. But I did notice that in the school system, there were some things that were repetitive. And I'm looking forward to being able to review the current school system curriculums, different school systems curriculums, to find out exactly what's being taught in the schools today. Now, I know my biggest complaint when I was in school was like a lot of the repetitive classes that were taken. Okay, like I know, oh God, the diagramming of sentences used to piss me off so bad. Okay, why? Because we had it in junior high, and then we were continually doing this same stuff all the way up to like the 11th grade. I'm like, okay, this is ridiculous. And I was a pretty good English student, okay? So it's not like I needed it. And I will say, even though it was repetitive, okay, when you get people on TV shows and you ask them things like, okay, what's a verb? What's an adverb? Okay, people have this blank look on their face, okay? So I would say that, and looking at my situation in the gang stalking activity, where we have people who were, you know, claiming to be what do you call it, degreed, 40-year degreed individuals, and, you know, kind of looking down on me because I didn't have, you know, the opportunity to go to a brick and mortar school or whatever. These repetitive lessons and things that were learned in school were completely ignored. Okay, so I believe either the school system is not teaching people workable skills, workable life skills, workable skills, not just for, work and training, but also things that they're incorporating in their life, to where when they hear something weird and that's off, like, you know, somebody being attacked in their country, right, for like religion, for example, okay, that should set off red bells, okay, because I know back in school, the first thing that we learned was freedom of religion. That was one of the things that we learned to be proud of our country, to develop our citizenship, okay? So why should we be proud to be an American? Because we have those freedoms, right? So that should have set off red bells into the minds of these educated people, but it didn't. Okay, it didn't. Now, some of it, I can't speak for every single last person, but, you know, I didn't see too many people talking and speaking up about it, okay? I also think that, you know, from what I've seen, I remember taking my kid, dropping my kid off to school when he was younger, and also hearing other people talk about their school teachers. Now, I'm a little bit old school when it comes to structure and order, and I personally, I do not believe that, kids should be feeling oppressed or in fear of their teacher, but they should have a certain amount of respect for their teacher, and this is something that I do not see. Okay. And I don't know if it is because, society has stepped away from addressing people by titles, and some people may think that that's formal. It might be too formal, but there definitely needs to be some sort of distinction between who's the teacher and who's the student. You know what I mean? And the fact that I don't believe that some of the kids behave well enough, they don't go into school, the school system, understanding the importance of learning. Okay, and they don't fear falling into ignorance enough for them to care about school. Okay, and now whether the curriculums are to me are a benefit in the school system or not. Okay, the idea is to build a person of character, and the teacher, number one, should be somebody who represents that. He or she should exude all the fine standards of leadership. Okay, and they should, I'm going to say she, sorry, I had some male teachers, I'm going to tell you, the male teachers that I did have were really cool, and they were fun, and they were relatable. See, I'm saying it's okay to be fun with students, but they always need to know who the teacher is. They always need to know who the person in charge is. And it's not about exerting control in a way where you're being big-headed about it. It's about the fact that this is how society works. They need to understand that there is a pecking order. It is what it is, okay? If society wants to run in a finely tuned way, and that's just the start of it, right, in the school system. So I do think that there needs to be, of course, respect for wisdom, and of course, better ways of keeping students engaged. Okay, like I said, creating that spark, that interest. When I was talking about unschooling in the last slide, it doesn't just apply to school kids, like little kids. Okay, so unschooling is a method that a lot of young kids, go through in the homeschooling program. But unschooling could be done, of course, in the school system as well. But it's not doesn't just apply to kids. Now, I know back in school, one of the things I loved about the classroom was the bright primary colors that were used in school. Okay. And like the bulletin boards and how we changed the season and made it pretty, and it was a really cool experience. And the bright colors kept the kids engaged, okay? But as we get older in school, we still need to be engaged. Even when we're in the ages of junior high, high school, and in college, they still need to trigger that imagination, needs to trigger that, be able to trigger that spark, that intrigue, so that people are encouraged to dig and learn more, okay? And a lot of that, I do remember there were some teachers, male teachers, that, seemed to bring that out in students. Okay, and of course there were female students, teachers that could do that too. The reason why I'm emphasizing the male teachers is because when I talk about teachers, I'm used to the female teachers, okay? But that's not me ignoring them, okay? And for some reason, when I think about teachers, I immediately think of, the little Fisher-Price people with the teacher, the little school teacher. She had the little blonde hair, she had a little bun, and then she had the little plastic dress on. And for some reason, when I think about school years, she's sitting at the desk. Okay, but anyway, so yes, I'm including male teachers and how they contribute as well. Also, when it comes to the regular school system, it's always taught as like a one size fits all, and that's not true. There are some kids. Kids have a very hard time sitting still. Okay, and I know that that's something eventually and gradually they're going to need to learn how to do. Okay, so there's got to be ways to incorporate understanding how kids work when they're able to understand, and this is very complex to do when you have a bunch of kids in one school classroom. Okay, because they're following a curriculum, and then there's some kids are not morning kids. Some kids learn better when they're at home, relaxed, stretched out on a bed, or it's uncomfortable for them to sit up or whatever.
So, I understand there's a lot of people out there who have experimented with different learning methods. As an autodidact who put their son through the homeschooling system and who has, I would consider myself homeschooled too in certain subjects, okay? That, learning can take place anywhere, not just sitting still in one place. Some people like to stretch out on a lawn chair, be outside, and some people say that listening to music helps them. I will say there's certain repetitive tasks where music does help me, but if I'm learning something new, I got to turn off the music because humming along and stuff like that takes too much brain power. But yeah, we do all have unique ways of learning, and that's something that that's not really accommodated, in the school system because we have so many different students. Is being an autodidact unpatriotic or rebellious? I'm going to say in my case, no. Okay, I know that going to school, I dealt with a lot of bullying, and I did try to get help from the school system. When I let my sister Tanya know, because a church member was a teacher at the school, I did let her know that I was dealing with bullying. But a lot of schools do not know how to handle bullying. They just don't. Okay, and sadly, in my case, because I was a targeted individual, I'm sure many of the teachers knew that I was, somebody who was basically a part of an experiment. So they didn't accommodate me. Okay. In some cases, if it's a juvenile delinquent, meaning somebody who is just, somebody who's rebellious, they purposely don't want to go to school, they want to cause trouble. Some kids are bullies, some kids are doing drugs or whatever. But, and I can't really speak for them, but I will say they are obviously a troubled individual, which is an indication that their rebellion may be a sign of something, some sort of distress that they might be going through at home. And so I think kids who are rebellious and kind of veer off on their own, in general, this has nothing really to do with studying, who don't go into the school system, or who are somebody who's trying to leave the school system, avoid it or whatever. Some of these kids might be dealing with personal problems that they actually need help. Okay, but in my case, I was a goody two shoes. I was bullied out of school. Now, it was not an act of rebellion. I really did not know how to handle it. Now, I became kind of embarrassed and awkward because I knew that there were people wondering, okay, well, why aren't you, with the program? Why aren't you going to school? Why are you ditching so much? Why are you doing this? And see, a lot of the kids who were bullying me for ditching were the ones who were bullying me. You know what I mean? So it was kind of a vicious cycle of, having to deal with it. So I don't believe that the school system was very accommodating to my needs at that time. But in general, though, by me reading material outside of the school system was not in any way a form of rebellion. That never even crossed my mind. It's like I knew that in school, for example, when it came to things like history, I understood that the underlying point of the school system, okay, was to create citizens that were willing to be obedient to the country. Okay, and I do understand that there was some sort of propaganda that took place in the school system, okay, because when you think about going to war and stuff like that, they want people to be compliant, okay, and hopefully, people have become more evolved and they should know that people need and expect more from a country than just to be that simple. I mean, like that simple-minded, okay, but anyway, so I understood that, the history, that there was more to history than what was being taught, okay? But when I would read things like, the Black history books in my family's house, and other people who contributed to, society or whatever, I just figured this is the system that we live in. Of course they're going to glorify their own people. And I never really formulated an opinion one way or another. Now, as I got older and had to live through this drama, then I started putting two and two together. And I'm glad that I took information from the school system, and I'm glad that I did my independent study by reading some of the Black history books that my father had at the house, and looking at some of the
uh, books, like, you know, in the library, and then of course doing internet searches. So no, I don't think that it's a form of rebellion. I think it's a part of mind expansion. Now, I think there's some people who might be fearful. I do know that homeschooling was just one of the many things that could get people targeted as a targeted individual. Not, now, my issue is bloodline. That, and I did homeschool my kid, but also uh, and I homeschool myself too, but homeschooling is one because some people are might have, some people do it because they have antisocial behavior, meaning that they do it because they might be crazy and they might want they might feel, and they don't get me wrong, I have my issues with society, but I don't want to create violence against society or anything like that. So some people look at people who are homeschooled, they look at them with a form of suspicion, like, you know, why are you off to yourself? Some people feel like I'm talking about some white nationalists who chose to homeschool their kids because they didn't want their kids going to school with other races, okay? And some of them had some sort of like agenda or whatever, and that's for the reason why they chose to exit the school system. Everybody's got their personal reasons, okay? And there might be some people who don't like our government or whatever, and they might be doing it because they're doing it as a form of rebellion. That was not me at all, okay? I did it because, number one, I would have learned things like law and psychology regardless, whether I wasn't bullied in school at all. I would have always taken an interest in outside study, okay? And I would probably would have incorporated my outside study with regular school institutionalized study had I not been bullied, okay? But that didn't happen, okay? But there are some people who, you know, like my dad. My dad was a kid who grew up in poverty, and his family moved around a lot, okay? And I know that my father worked, you know, at pretty decent jobs. He worked at NASA, and I know he did not have a high level position, but still, you know how cutthroat people are, okay? And my father didn't have like a 4-year grade. They're the same kind of threats and bullying that they used against my father, they did the same thing to me. Okay, but I will say that my father was a big time autodidact, and my father learned as much as he could. Now, growing up in the country, some of the stories that my dad told me were kind of mind-blowing. Okay, and I can imagine that they grew up in very scarce situations to where, like, you know, my dad said that sometimes they would have to hunt a raccoon to eat, that kind of crazy stuff. He also told me a story about some boy that developed rabies and he ended up dying, okay? It's crazy stuff that when you're living way out in the rural areas, you know, you're very limited to things like school. Like, you can't just walk to school. What do you do, okay? So my father had, you know, he would dip in and out of school. The thing is, it's like, you know, there were some years where he was close to school and then he'd go to school. And if he couldn't, a lot of the responsibility was put on my father. My father was one of the old, I think my father was the oldest child in the school. So for a lot of people in the older generations who had it hard, okay, they might have went to school maybe here, maybe this year, and the next year they couldn't go because they were helping their dad farming, sharecropping, or whatever nightmare drama that they had to go through. Okay, so my dad was a person who went into the military hoping that the military would cover his school. Okay. Unfortunately, you know, they must have did a little bit for him, but they didn't do enough. So my dad would take, you know, courses like NRI. That was a computerized course and technology, stuff like that. Those sort of, I think that school's still in existence. It might still be. But anyway, there's different reasons why people take courses or learn independently, even without the purpose of adding it to their career. Whether they're doing it for fun, enjoyment, pleasure, to build their life, or sometimes people are doing things and acquiring different skills so that they can, because they're already in the field and they're just adding a little bit more to their what do you call it, resume or whatever, and that's completely fine to do. So no, it is not necessarily a rebellious act. Some people, in my case, it was done because of me just dealing with my situation. What is the point of learning outside of the school system? Some people have just burning interest in things. Like, you know, I had mentioned that I was interested in the occult, and I realized that was just built in my DNA. So since I already had that interest, I might as well understand, like, you know, terminology, definitions,
history of other people who've experienced this sort of stuff, so that's one. And sometimes, even the school system, I don't know if some of you guys might remember talking about certain things that happened in history, and then maybe your teacher might have asked you to do a book report, okay? And you'd go to the either school or the public library and get a book, and you would do a field report on it, and that would require you to step outside of just the regular textbooks that are being discussed for the school. So a lot of it's just either hobbies, like for example in the Wright brothers case, those pioneers of aviation, the brother Wilbur, he took a course, okay, like I guess a correspondence course on autonautics, is that how you pronounce it? Aeronautics, okay, and he took it because he wanted to experiment, and then he ended up creating an airplane. There's different reasons why, okay? But some people would think, okay, a lot of people are not motivated, okay? They're not motivated. Some people are burnt out on school. They hate learning. Well, it's not that they hate learning. They always associate learning with things that might bore them. Maybe they're just not, interested outside. They are not somebody who's going to be motivated or driven to read or inquire about any sort of subject on their own, okay? But there are people such as myself who are self-driven. And I'm going to say, I can't speak for everyone, but I have some sort of internal drive that, I like learning. I need to constantly be engaged. I have to constantly make life interesting, and I find my passions through learning. And once I learn, I become inspired. And once I become inspired, then I want to create, okay? So it's just a part of that. I also would say that, when it comes to life skills, the things that I've acquired, I can incorporate it into my everyday life, and then I also could incorporate those same skills into a career, okay? Maybe like I can't be a lawyer, but I could certainly handle certain forms of legal work, okay? So yeah, I mean, there's different reasons. Sometimes it's the school, the institution itself encourages like a book report, and then sometimes you just have burning questions, burning fascinations, interests, hobbies, curiosities that push you to do independent learning. Okay, to wrap things up with the questions, the first question is going to be, what skills can you use for work as an autodidact without a bachelor's degree? Well, I had mentioned that I understand people. So when it comes to psychology, obviously I cannot work as a paid professional. I'm incapable of doing that. But could I list psychology as a skill? Yes, I could. I could list psychology as a skill, and I would say that psychology is something that's useful in the workplace. Why? Because when it comes to things like customer service, when it comes to interacting with other employees, when it comes to perhaps somebody who's managing, even if they're not managing employees, they're still managing some part of their work, okay? And all that has to do with interacting with other people, customers, internal, external, when it comes to business. So when it comes to psychology, then I would say, yeah, that's something that can be used as a skill. Also, when it comes to law, I cannot practice law, okay? But I can, work in certain positions that support that. For example, could I work as a receptionist or some sort of executive, executive or administrative assistant for a law office? Yes, I probably could do that. I could probably do that, okay? It would be fun, you know why? Because I would look at all those law books that they have, right? And then also, like, for example, people who manage like an office, an office manager, and no, I do not want to do any management work, okay? But I'm just saying is what my skills could be relatable for. Something that I do not have to have, what you call it, like a, like when it comes to law, you have to have a license to do that. I don't have to have a license to work in HR. I don't. Okay, so if I wanted to work in HR and use my skills, my understanding of business laws, yeah, I could be an HR. That is, of course, if an employer was interested in doing that. And I don't have any interest in doing that. But those are the skills that I could list. Can I list law, business law? on my resume? Yes, I could. And also, I did mention that I did take a course on legal contacts and torts. When it comes to content and copywriting, I can do advertising for the companies in different ways. I can use my script writing, like for example, if a company wanted to do a commercial. Okay, I am not the best narrator, but do I think that I have what it takes to write a script? Yeah, I do. Everybody knows I'm creative. I can literally I can create something out of nothing, literally. Constantly, 365 days of the year, 7 days a week, whatever. 24 hours a day. Script writing, I can do blogs. You know what I mean? I can write stories, sort things, engage online. I can do email ads. I can definitely do newsletters. And what I'm interested in doing is like learning more about B2B, which is like business to business and business to customer advertising. That kind of stuff interests me. But see, even though these skills were not what you call something that I got or got a degree in, they can still be added to something that I can contribute to my resume as well as my working knowledge. Okay. Also, how do you prove you're worthy? If I don't have a bachelor's degree in psychology, how do I prove that I'm worthy? I think the proof is in the pudding. Okay, I think a lot of people who have watched my videos, even though they may not want to admit it, whether it's on my channel or the shadow channel that's uploaded to my videos, they know that when I talk about people, I'm spot on. Okay, they can also see the proof is that when I was talking about the laws and legalities, even when it comes to things relating to the Bible, which is not necessarily human law, it's more like some sort of law that relates to a person's religion. Okay, I'm good at that. The proof is in the pudding. It's proven. My skills are proven. You can also tell if a person's skills are proven by the way that they conduct themselves. Are they actually showing and demonstrating by how they live their life that they have incorporated what they learned? That right there, the proof is in the pudding. Okay? So, yes, I can take all of those skills, right, and add it to my work line, my line of work, as necessary. What else? So this is how you prove that you're worthy. Not so much as saying, hey, you know what? Because I can tell you there's a lot of people who hold a bachelor's degree in all those subjects that I just mentioned. Okay? But they don't necessarily, that does not necessarily make them qualified to do the work they do. Think about that. Well, I think I'm just about ready to wrap this video up, but I did want to mention how important it was to keep your mind open for learning in different ways. Like I said, there's always a traditional reading, and I think that that's always wonderful because there's so many different authors and so many different spins on certain information that you can obtain and use. But I don't want to ignore and forget how important it was in the late 1960s and the 70s that, things like the public broadcasting station introduced a lot of educational tools to the general public. And one of those, a few of these TV shows, this right here is the Electric Company. This is the logo for their TV show that I do remember, which was something that we watched at home, as well as they would bring out a television in the classroom so that we could watch it. Now this show covered everything from like small words, basic words, pronunciation, connecting words, and they had a lot of cute little cartoon skits in between the shows. Other shows that were on the PBS channel would be things like Sesame Street, Via Alegre, and there was a show called Zoom. All of these TV shows were multicultural. I mean, they showed kids of different races learning together, playing together, functioning together. That was one of the things that appealed to a lot of people on when it came to Sesame Street. A lot of these shows were really beneficial when it came to little kids before they entered the school system. Now, I'm saying that they still had things for older kids, but I would say that these particular shows helped a lot of kids learn how to read before they actually entered into kindergarten. I'm sure many people remember Schoolhouse Rock. Now, as silly as this sounds, a lot of people remember the preamble from Schoolhouse Rock more so than they remember learning it from school. Now, I will say the preamble in Schoolhouse Rock
some of the words were modified so that they can keep with the tune and the, I guess, the rhyme of the song, okay? But this is how a lot of people remembered that. How if they had to refer to it in the test or what that meant or whatever, a lot of people use things like Schoolhouse Rock to jog their memory. It was like a reinforcer of what you were learning in the school system, okay? Not only Schoolhouse Rock, ABC, this is where the TV channel that Schoolhouse Rock, I believe, was introduced on. But ABC would have a lot of things like school, after school specials that related to, life issues, and they did have a lot of educational learning. Now, I know since I don't have any kids who are in school, there are a lot of educational tools available. I don't know exactly what kind of TV shows or entertainment is made for that. But those things are what I was talking about earlier, is the pull, the things that trigger the intrigue, which encourages people to learn more. Now, I'm not saying that go ahead and get yourself some, old copies of Schoolhouse Rock and you're going to learn everything. That's not it. I'm just saying is seeing TV shows like that when I was a kid encouraged me to learn more. Okay, like for example, the I'm Just a Bill. That was one of the Schoolhouse Rock cartoons or little presentations. Okay, so then you start understanding how the whole system of government's supposed to work, right? It's these sort of things that trigger your interest, and from that interest, that point of intrigue, then you learn more. You start looking at comparing things that you read in the library, or you might get a book on it, and so on and so forth. Okay, things like this are good to show to kids because it piques their interest. And the same thing goes with adults. I know a lot of adults who laughed at me for watching cartoons, right? But I will tell you, like for example, if there were certain things that adults needed to learn, like for example, laws, or I personally think that re-education needs to take place in the United States, so that people start learning to be able to interact in a more proper manner. Okay, because a lot of people are very rude. A lot of people do not know how to consider other people's feelings and this sort of stuff. So in order to do that, to not make it boring, cartoon presentations are not a bad idea. Also, another thing would be good is the use of puppets, hand puppets, okay, to keep people engaged. Or it could be made into a dramatic series or whatever. There's all kinds of ways to introduce educational topics to pique the interest of people, to encourage them to do further reading, into those topics. Okay, I also want to mention child guidance toys. I know in the earlier slides I had talked about Frank Lloyd Wright and how his mother purchased him some geometrically shaped toys, and that helped him develop an interest in architecture. Child guidance toys are toys that intrigue and spark interest and possibly encourage kids to go into a certain direction. Now, when I was a kid, sometimes you would flip open the box, and it would be written like, for example, this is a child guidance toy. Okay, things like little mommy sets where like you had like a broom, a dustpan, a little apron, and all that little girly stuff that I loved, by the way. That would be a child guidance toy. Or like Tonka trucks were a child guidance toy. And I remember having a doctor kit when I was a kid. Okay, and the more realistic, meaning the more pieces and stuff like that you have to these toys, you're sparking interest. Okay, there's a reason why they used to call them a child guidance toy. Now, I would like to say that I am not a doctor, but I do understand forms of the anatomy, and I did mention this before, but when I was growing up, we had a medical encyclopedia, and I did read about it. So when I get sick, and because I was a target individual, I can't go to the doctor, right? So things like understanding ailments of the body, I would say that I'm pretty good at, okay? And I will say that I did have a child guidance toy with a doctor's kit, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I found it fascinating because the little stethoscope, I think it's called stethoscope, right, actually worked. I could hear my dad's heartbeat. Okay, and I took it seriously. And do I think that it made me interested in medicine a little bit? Kind Kind of. So whether your kid goes into the medical profession or not, it might get them interested in other forms of healing. Okay, maybe if your kid gets a fireman, what do you call it, a fireman toy, he doesn't necessarily have to be a fireman, but it could make him interested to might work in that industry or something. You know what I mean? But do not discount those child guidance toys, because those are what? Those are gateways to learning, is what they are. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this video. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will be back with another video soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.